I call meeting number 5 of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration to order. We will continue with the study of the impact of COVID-19 on immigration. And first of all, before we begin, I just want to remind all attendees about the health and safety measures which need to be taken. To all the attendees in the room, to physically distance yourselves from others for at least 2 meters, and to wear a mask until you are seated and more than 2 meters away from anyone else. This is a hybrid meeting. Some members are appearing in person in the parliamentary precinct, and the other members are appearing remotely. Reminder to members, please speak at a pace slow enough for interpretation to keep up. The clerk is tracking the raised hands and keeping a speaking list if needed. All questions should be decided by a recorded vote, except for those decided unanimously or on division. This is based on the order adopted by the House on September 23rd. The meeting is being webcast and is available on PAL View. We are continuing listening to the witnesses on the impact of COVID-19 on the immigration system. And I want to welcome all the witnesses today. Thanks to all the witnesses for appearing before the committee and providing your important testimonies. So we will be hearing today from Universities Canada. They are being represented by Paul Davidson, President and Chief Executive Officer, as well as Wendy Tarian, Director, External Relations and Research. We also have Colleges and Institutes Canada being represented by Denise Amiot, President and the Chief Executive Officer. I would also welcome Debbie Douglas, Executive Director for Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. On behalf of Alliance Canada Hong Kong, we will hear from Robert Falconer, Research Associate, Immigration and Refugee Policy, School of Public Policy, University of Calgary, and also Staris Chan, representative from Alliance Canada Hong Kong. As individuals, we have appearing before us today Emmanuel Bergeron and Jitin Shori, lawyer for Shori Law. So I welcome all the witnesses. We will proceed with our first panel, and I will start with Colleges and Institute Canada. All the witnesses will have 5 minutes for their opening remarks. And I will start with Colleges and Institute Canada. Would request Denise Amiot, President and Chief Executive Officer, to please start. You have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bonjour, good afternoon,
Bonjour.
everybody. So Canada's colleges, institutes, polytechnics, and CEGEPs are helping international students become ideal candidates for permanent residency and citizenship. They graduate with Canadian education qualifications, in-demand skills, and are proficient in at least one of our official languages. International students are key in achieving the historic immigration targets recently announced by Minister Mendicino. La gestion de cette pandémie a donné lieu à des collaborations et à des innovations remarquables. La mise en place, par exemple, d'un processus en 2 étapes pour l'examen des demandes de permis d'études a donné aux étudiants l'assurance dont ils avaient besoin pour commencer.
Sorry for interrupting.
Has given students. The interpreter was on the wrong channel. She apologizes. She's on the right channel now. But we have to do more. Even though Canada has started again to process demands from international students Visa application centers in India, Brazil, and Mexico remain closed, making it impossible for students to provide their biometrics and obtain study permit approval. We predict that the global mobility of students will take 2 to 5 years to reach pre-pandemic levels. For Canada to remain competitive, we must continue to innovate and invest in improving the student experience and in streamlining systems to attract those students and future citizens.
The interpreter would like if you can move the microphone closer to your mouth.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you.
So where was I now? Okay.
Madam Chair,
colleges.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just on a similar point of order before we begin. I wonder if the witness's channel is switched on to the French channel as well. I'm hearing both the French and the interpretation coming across just as loud as the other, so it's very hard to sort of hear one voice over the other.
So should I put it on off? You're on mute, Madam Chair.
Sorry. If you are, Ms. Emott, if you are speaking in French, then you should have French on. And if you are speaking in English, then you should have English on.
OK, parfait.
Okay.
Alors, je termine ma phrase en français, la dernière.
So I'll finish my last sentence in French. For Canada to remain competitive, we must continue to innovate and invest in improving the student experience and in streamlining systems to attract those students and future citizens.
Colleges and institutes represent the fastest growing study level for international students to Canada, accounting for just under half of all study permit holders at the post-secondary level in 2019. This is in part because colleges are deeply connected to their communities and responsive to local labor markets. Colleges and institutes embody Canadian values and often act as service hubs for newcomers. They are vectors through which temporary and permanent residents gain the language skills and the Canadian education and experience necessary for their successful integration. As Canada recovers, our network of publicly supported colleges and institutes is instrumental in helping to develop, attract, and retain talent. In fact, 95%, yes, 95% of Canada's population lives within 50 kilometers of a college or an institute campus. This means our members play a key role in bringing the benefits of immigration to communities and local economies. With that in mind, I'd like to focus the committee's attention on the following 5 recommendations. First, short-term measures to remain competitive and attract students. A, allow for the collections of biometric data at the point of entry for students from countries where visa application centers remain closed, and immediately extend to the end of 2021 the 2-stage study permit application process and the provisions that allow for time spent studying online to count towards a postgraduate work permit. Second, that IRCC work collaboratively with CICAN and other stakeholders to develop and implement an information sharing mechanism that would allow visa officers and designated learning institutions to share information in real time related to admissions and study permit outcomes. Thirdly, in support of Canada's evolving labor market needs, Express Entry must emphasize points for post-secondary education with in-demand technical and professional skills. Fourth, that the provision of settlement services be extended to international students interested in making Canada their home. Lastly, fifth, that further investment be made in promoting Canada as a place to study, work, and live, to ensure that colleges and institutes can welcome students and potential new immigrants from a diverse set of countries.
Sorry for interrupting. Your time
Thank
is
you.
up.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. We will now move on to Ms. Douglas, representing Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants. Ms. Douglas, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I appreciate this opportunity to contribute to the study. As many of you know, OCASI is the umbrella organization for agencies working with immigrants and other newcomers here in Ontario, where I'm located. It comes as no surprise that there have been many delays in all immigration, refugee, international student, and migrant worker streams. For many, the delays existed even before the pandemic. A big concern for all streams is that dependent children would age out and become ineligible to be sponsored. We recommend that the age of dependent children is locked in as of March 1st, 2020, so that regardless of when the application is reopened, these children are included in the application. Family members who are approved for sponsorship still cannot travel into Canada in most cases because of travel ban or difficulty in arranging travels. Many families overseas have not been able to find out what will happen when the visa to land in Canada expires, or how and when a new one would be issued to allow them to land. We recommend that all landing dates are extended at least until the borders are fully open and travel fully resumes. Or IRCC should land overseas applicants via email as they are beginning to do now for people already in Canada. That would allow them to come here as permanent residents regardless of current travel restrictions. Permanent resident card renewals are also delayed. Some permanent residents whose cards expired are stranded outside of Canada with no hope of being able to return. Most, if not all, embassies are still closed, and stranded permanent residents have nowhere to turn for help. We are recommending that the Canadian government issue a public communication so that those overseas and or their families here will know that those with PR will continue to be recognized as permanent residents in spite of the expiration of their PR cards. Refugees. IRCC's level for family members of refugees accepted in Canada is far lower than the number of people who are waiting family reunification. The combination of low numbers, existing processing delays, and COVID-related delays will only make people wait longer for family reunification. We recommend that the total numbers of refugee family reunification should be increased. Communications. There are gaps and delays in communications from IRCC. The only information is what is being posted on the website. That is sometimes unclear or doesn't speak to the specific situations people are facing because of COVID. We appreciate IRCC has tried to keep the public informed of most measures. There is still a need for consistent, clear, and more comprehensive information about migration offices overseas, as well as local offices here. Exactly what is available and what is not. Inadequate communication is one of the biggest concerns we have heard from our member agencies and their clients. We recommend that IRCC should show more flexibility and compassion in this extraordinary period. Before I move on to my last point, I am sure that you've all been receiving emails from many sponsored spouses. We've been hearing story after story of months and months, sometimes as long as 28 months is the last story I saw this morning in an email from spouses. There is no information, and people are wanting to know when they can have their spouses here in Canada. Parents and grandparents. We appreciate the government's recent announcements to expedite spousal sponsorship, allow the entry of extended family, and temporarily ease the minimum necessary income requirement. Introduction of the minimum necessary income and the later 30% increase has been a tremendous hardship for many Canadian residents. Until Canada dismantles structural disadvantage and ends income inequality, racialized Canadians, especially racialized immigrant women, this is over the last 6-7 years. So we are again recommending that the minimum necessary income be eliminated, both fair and equitable and
Sorry for
consistent
interrupting, Ms.
with an
Douglas.
anti-racism feminist
Sorry for
approach.
interrupting, Ms. Douglas. Your time is up. You will get an opportunity to answer the questions when we go. Ms. Douglas, are you with us?
About that, I have no idea what happened there. Are we
No,
all
no.
back?
No, we are back, but we lost you. But your time is up, and you will get an opportunity to raise the issues which you want to raise in our round of questioning.
Sorry, Madam Chair, just on a point of order.
Absolutely, thank you.
I don't know.
Yes,
Madam
Ms. Kwan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I don't know if others that experienced the same problems I did. Basically, the last 2 minutes or so of Ms. Douglas' comments, I couldn't hear her. It was kind of like in and out, and I don't quite exactly know what she said. I wonder if she could just repeat perhaps the last 2 minutes or so.
Just 1 second. Mr. Clerk, are we getting the signal from Ms. Douglas clear, or is there some connection problem?
I'm not certain, but I noticed the lag. The possibility exists that the witness's internet was lagging or the connection was lagging.
Yes, I just saw a sign saying that my internet connection was unstable, and as you can tell, I disappeared. I lost you for about 30 seconds.
Okay, so can you, would you have an idea if we give you 2 minutes to, your last 2 minutes, which was not clear to everyone, if you can repeat?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We were talking, I wanted to
Yeah,
speak.
just last 2 minutes, there was a problem, so I'll give you 2 minutes to just give a sum up of your remarks.
Yes, this recommendation, as I said, we continue to bring it forward, and it's about the minimum necessary income. We have pointed out that since the introduction of the MNI and later the 30% increase, it has caused tremendous hardship for many Canadian residents. In particular, racialized Canadians, as we all know, tend to be overrepresented in low-wage jobs or in low incomes, and they have been disproportionately impacted by the MNI rule. Until Canada dismantles structural disadvantage and ends income inequality, racialized Canadians, especially racialized immigrant women, will be disproportionately excluded from family reunification. We recommend that the MNI be eliminated to make the immigration system more fair and equitable and consistent with an anti-racism feminist approach. We welcome the opening of the Parents and Grandparents Sponsorship Program, but the number of spaces is too low. Many families have been waiting for years to reunite with family. In some cases, parents and grandparents have died and dependent family members have aged out. The cap on parents and grandparents sponsorship is unfair rather than the lottery and takes a heavy toll on families. We are therefore recommending that the cap be removed and more resources are put into processing so that everyone who wants to reunite with parents and grandparents and meets the criteria can apply and expect to get a decision within a reasonable amount of time. I will hold off on international students since my colleagues from CCI and from the Association of University Teachers are here. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Now we will move on to Universities Canada, and they are being represented by Mr. Davidson and Ms. Therion. Mr. Davidson, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and I think you are sharing your time with Wendy Therion. So floor is yours, Mr. Davidson. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for conducting this study and for the extraordinary work that all parliamentarians are doing during this challenging time. Especially like to welcome the newer members to this committee. Of course, immigration is one of Canada's great competitive strengths, and the work of this committee is important to ensuring that asset remains. With me today is Wendy Terrien, who leads our public policy and public affairs efforts, and she'll be particularly available for questions the committee may have. As you may know, Universities Canada represents all 96 universities across the country. And taken together, Canada's universities are a $38 billion enterprise. We're significant drivers of economic prosperity. Universities provide employment for over 310,000 people. In many cases, universities are the largest employer in their community, and we are the talent engines for Canada. It's great to be here with my colleague Denise Amiot, and I very much support her comments earlier today. We work together, particularly on matters of immigration and success for international students. Canada's universities are an integral part of the Team Canada approach to the COVID-19 pandemic, from mitigating the risk to the search for a vaccine and cure, and accelerating Canada's economy into recovery. We appreciate the challenge now facing the government and all of us, that of restarting the Canadian economy while continuing the health measures necessary to keep COVID-19 at bay. We've greatly appreciated the steps the government has taken to support our sector, including ensuring international students can continue their studies, whether online or in person. As these measures take effect, I want to highlight the role that universities and international students specifically can have in our recovery from COVID-19. Canada's need to attract skilled talent predates the pandemic. As our population ages and labor force shrinks, our future prosperity depends on our ability to welcome immigrants from around the world. And universities are an integral part of Canada's immigration system, welcoming well over 200,000 international students per year. Once in Canada, these students are able to take advantage of government pathways to immigration. Our institutions can be key partners in attracting, training, and retaining skilled talent. At all levels of study, international students bring new perspectives, ideas, and valuable human connections abroad. As students, they contribute over $22 billion a year to the Canadian economy annually. As graduates, many become highly skilled individuals, contributing to local Canadian communities, or they return home with an appreciation for what Canada has to offer as a society and as a business partner. While those students are here, international students play a crucial part of our research and innovation ecosystem. Our ability to conduct research and to make new discoveries that strengthen our economy is dependent on a steady flow of international talent. International graduate students in particular are the arms and legs of our research enterprise. International student recruitment has, however, been hampered by COVID-19, as Denise was mentioning. Federal measures to accommodate online learning for international students and to provide a pathway for their safe return to Canada have been very helpful. But after 5 years of an average of 10% growth annually, international student enrollment at universities this year was down 2%. And while these aggregate numbers may not seem so bad given the circumstances, it's important to note that 51 universities saw a decline in international students compared to last year. Of these, 26 saw a decline of over 10% and 14 saw a decline of over 20%. This is having an impact not just for the universities, but also for the grocery stores, car dealerships, and families renting a room to international students. And it is a loss that will be felt for at least the next 4 years. The good news is that given events in other countries, Canada's brand remains strong. We've seen federal investment in regaining traditional markets, as well as building our relationship with emerging markets like Vietnam and the Philippines. With these strategic investments, Canada can actually leapfrog competitor countries and build back stronger relationships with key sources for international students. These investments will ensure, as the speech from the throne outlined, that Canada remains a destination of choice for top talent. These international students, many of them graduate students, will help grow our economy and stabilize the recovery of the post-education sector, post-secondary education sector. We appreciate the work that all of the members of the committee have done to help Canada recover from COVID-19, and we look forward to partnering to build a stronger Canada. Thank you again for the opportunity to appear.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Now we will move to our round of questioning, and if any of the witnesses were not, because of time constraint, were not able to bring forward everything they wanted to, you can submit your submissions in writing to the clerk of the committee, and they will be considered also. So now we will move to Mr. Allison. Mr. Allison, you have 6 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to our witnesses. It's great to see. I know some of you witnesses I've seen in other committees, so I'm on a new committee. And Paul, you come to mind. I've known you many years on the Hill, as well as Wendy and certainly Denise as well. I've seen you in other committees. Listen, I got some tough questions in terms of I understand and appreciate how important our foreign students are. And I look at the spat that we had with Saudi Arabia back in 2018. You know, in Saudi Arabia, based on the numbers in 2016, was probably about 10% of what we get in terms of people and students from China. So I'm going to ask a question, and these may be not easy questions, but I think they're absolutely something we need to consider. We got issues around Hong Kong, we got issues around Huawei, we got issues around the two Michaels. Are you guys concerned about what the Chinese may do in terms of retaliation? I mean, it's a very delicate balance. My last numbers in 2016 had us at almost 150,000 short-term and long-term students from China. I'd be interested, Paul or Wendy, in what those numbers are today. Are they the same? I know we've had a bit of decline because of COVID, and once again, how completely important students are in terms of immigration and revenue, et cetera, et cetera. Could you just maybe elaborate on that relationship with China? It's a very delicate one.
Be happy to start, and Wendy may be able to have the most up-to-date enrollment numbers from China. But let me first say that international student enrollment has grown both for colleges and universities over the last decade. China has been a significant source, so too has India. China is the largest source for university students. That said, for a number of years, we've been working to diversify the source countries, and we're very actively doing that to make sure that we don't become overly dependent on any one particular market. There are some differences between the Saudi situation and the China situation in that most Chinese students are self-funded, self-financed, where in the Saudi situation, they were government-sponsored scholarship students from the Saudi government. So there's some differences there. And frankly, both Canada and China recognize the value of having the flow of students from China to Canada and from Canada to China. You're right that we're in a period of changing geopolitical dynamics, and so we're quite mindful of those dynamics. But we also know that universities do play an important role in keeping channels of communication open when other channels are not open, and also that the people-to-people contacts can develop and can contribute lasting benefit to Canada.
Okay, thank you. And I know that recently the minister was just sort of questioned on what would happen given what's going on in Hong Kong. Would they consider, restricting some of the, people of influence? What's your thought on, restricting Chinese students as a result of their parents and who they are and their connections? I mean, that's also another delicate balance you guys may need to look at.
I guess, and welcome to the committee. These are terrific, terrific questions. And because over the years we have worked together on a number of issues, and that all parties have worked on building and strengthening the relationship with China and increasing the flow of students with China, I think we're all committed to trying to find solutions that reflect the current reality. As I say, one stream of that is to diversify our source of students. With regard to the situation in Hong Kong, our universities take those situations very seriously, because what universities believe in is in the free flow of people and ideas. And there are a number of challenges with regard to the situation in Hong Kong, and with the new legislative frameworks that have been introduced. That said, we want to make sure that we have a careful, calm, and dispassionate conversation about these challenges. And one of the benefits of Canada's approach to these matters and immigration matters is that it's been largely nonpartisan. And so that's what we're really encouraging, is to have that kind of dialogue where we look at what are the changing dynamics, what are the changing security challenges, what are the changing realities, both in the realigning geopolitical world.
Thanks, Paul. Last question, and like I said, I apologize for my first meeting here, giving you guys a hard time, but Chinese has a tremendous amount of influence, and we've seen article after article on how they influence not only our institutions but individuals here. What do you guys do? I mean, you guys have to be aware of that, and that once again, it's got to be a delicate balance in how you deal with that stuff. How do you deal with the influence that China has over people here on the ground, as well as their influence in trying to influence our institutions?
We do a whole number of things, and there may be other venues and other opportunities to describe those in greater detail, but I want to assure the members of the committee that universities and other actors take the challenges of new geopolitical dynamics very, very seriously. We're in regular dialogue with government officials across multiple departments and agencies to make sure that we've got the most reliable and up-to-date information in order to help better manage the outcome in the interest of Canada and in the interest of students.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Paul. And like I said, I appreciate having you guys here today. I understand completely how important our foreign students are. I've got Brock University as well as Niagara College. I met with both of them recently, and they've talked to me about the challenges they have in terms of being able to get students from all across the country. And I apologize that Denise, I didn't get to you, but I'm almost out of time, so I'll just have to see if we can get you in a subsequent round. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ellison. And we will now move on to Ms. Dillon. Ms. Dillon, you have 6 minutes.
Madame Denise Amiot.
Ms. Denise Amiot.
You referred to the new immigration targets announced by the immigration minister. Can you tell us why you support those objectives? Yes, thank you for the question. I'm pleased to answer that question. Our institutions are hearing what employers in their regions are saying, what national organizations are saying, national organizations which represent industry, and everyone's talking about a lack of skilled workers. We know that will still be a problem once the economy starts to recover. We know that immigrants are a key to fix that situation, and international students are ideal immigrants, if you will. They speak the language, they studied here in Canada, and they often have work experience in Canada. Let me give you an example. The CIGEP in Sherbrooke. I'll show you how the CIGEP works to help address this situation. So the CIGEP in Sherbrooke reached an agreement with 8 municipalities in the area, and they look after international students. So on the one hand, the municipalities look after housing, co-op placements, and jobs for international students, but the CIGEP in Sherbrooke helps with the training and support for students. I can talk about the CIGEP of Matane or the CIGEP in Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Those institutions often tell us that without international students, the mining sector would be hard up because often international students study in areas which Canadian students don't want to study in. So there are a ton of advantages to bringing more international students to Canada and to accelerate their status so they can become immigrants. Thank you for your answer. Next question. It's also about students. In our riding, many students have trouble joining their spouses because the open work permit of these students are turned down. They're rejected. A study has also shown the impact COVID is having on this group of would-be immigrants. Do you think COVID has an impact on the number of foreign students who want to come and study in Canada? Sometimes it takes over 3 years for them to reunite with their spouse. Are you asking me the question? Yes, Ms. Amiot.
Microphone towards your mouth.
Sorry, I forgot about that. So, yes, I'm sure the COVID has had an impact. I think Canada has to be competitive. Canada has to make it easy for students to come to this country. But as it now stands, we know that some offices abroad are closed, and this prevents foreign students from coming to Canada. For instance, they can't get their biometric tests done. We have to find a solution to that problem. So, to address the issue you've raised, spouses, clearly, it's a factor. We have to make it easier for these students who have spouses in Canada to come to Canada, and we need to help them integrate the labor market. Thank you for your answer, Ms. Amiot. My next question is for Ms. Douglas.
Spoke a little bit before about the impact COVID and immigration, especially on women. Do you believe that women are having a tougher time getting TRVs, temporary resident visas, because they don't have children and they don't have a husband, so they're considered to not have any ties back home and nothing to go back to? Can you talk to us a little bit about what you think about the requirements on this segment of society? Thank you.
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think what our experience has shown is that the folks who tend to have a very difficult time getting temporary visitors visas tend to be racialized, and that would include racialized women for a number of reasons. One of the things I wanted to talk to, given the government's comment on issues of race and commitment to addressing anti-racism, is actually to put forward a recommendation about this, which fits really well into your question, that we are recommending that the government collect and publish disaggregated race and gender based data for all classes of immigration, including those
Sorry
seeking
for interrupting,
TRV.
Ms. Douglas. We will have to end here. The time is up. Sorry for interrupting. We will now move on to Ms. Normandian. Ms. Normandian, you have 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of the witnesses for your opening statements. I have questions for various witnesses. First question for Ms. Amiot. You said that it was basically impossible for would-be immigrants to get biometric tests taken. For instance, at the Cégep Saint-Jean de Richelieu has people from l'île de la Réunion who want to come to Canada. These people want to work in the biotech sector and in sectors where we need workers, but there's no Canadian Immigration Centre on the island. So do you believe that in countries where there's no biometric testing, there should be testing here in Canada? Absolutely, Madame Normandin. That's a very sensitive point, a very serious issue. All of our members talk about that exact problem. It's a problem especially in some Francophone African countries. We have to find a solution. I know that the department had launched a pilot project with a portable biometric testing system, but we don't know what happened with that. They stopped it. They stopped that pilot project. So what we're saying is that in those countries where there's no testing capability, why can't we do that here in Canada when would-be immigrants come here? What we're seeing is that there is a decrease in the number of international students coming to Canada. As with Paul, I'd like to say the decrease is 2%, but I think it's a lot more than that. And that was the case for the spring, it's the case this fall, and it'll be the case for winter. So we need to find a solution. Do you think it's harder to recruit Francophone students? Answer, yes. What we've realized is that for Francophone or French-speaking students, many of them come from Africa, but everything goes through Senegal or Paris, depending on what country you're coming from. We've had discussions with people in Senegal. They are trying, but they don't have the resources to help those students. So if we are serious about immigration, if we really want to bring English and French-speaking people to Canada, we need to find solutions and sustainable ones. Thank you very much. My next question is for Madame Terrien or Mr. Davidson. You talked about online learning, online courses. However, online courses are good during a pandemic, but they might not be a solution in normal times. There's different time zones, and the fact that some courses abroad are not recognized by our universities. So I'd like to hear you address the relevance of online classes and how important they really are outside of a pandemic.
A few words, then I'll ask Wendy to follow up. First of all, in terms of the online experience, Canada's universities moved 1.4 million learners online in 10 days. It was a remarkable achievement, and students were able to complete their coursework in the winter, and then in the spring and summer terms, we've been investing heavily to improve the online experience for students. It's particularly important for international students, and it was a key feature that distinguishes Canada from other jurisdictions that enabled international students to register online, to continue their studies, and to be eligible for the immigration benefits of study in Canada. I'll turn now to Wendy Terrien just to describe some of the other dimensions of the online experience for international students and for Canadian students as well.
Bonjour, Madame Normandin.
Good afternoon, Madame Normandin. Thank you for the question. Yes, indeed, you're raising an important point. Clearly, each international student wants to come to Canada. That's the final goal.
If I can ask Mr. Clerk to look into, I think there is a lot of echo, so we can recheck.
Yes, I'll look into that right now.
Est-ce que je devrais le mettre en français, c'est ça?
Would you like me to continue in French? Is this better?
The French version, if you are speaking in English, please check the English version. So I think you have to change. That might be the issue, but there is a lot of echo.
Oui, j'ai changé le...
I did change the setting. So what I was saying is that each international student wants to come to Canada. Clearly, that's the final objective. Now, the issue this committee is studying, how to bring international students to Canada. Well, this is part of our objectives as a country. Online studying, online learning is important because, as was said, this way international students can start their studies. Otherwise, we could have lost a whole cohort of a whole group of students. That said, at a certain point, it's really important to transition those students from virtual studying to in-person studying, because we want the students to benefit the most from their learning experience. And ultimately, Canada will benefit the most from the students' learning experience. I don't know if I have a bit of time left. Final question for Ms. Amiot. Canada, of course, needs to be competitive internationally. If we have exchange programs with streamlined paperwork, would that be a solution? Yes, absolutely. That's one of the recommendations we made to Minister Mendocino. Students need to be able to get information directly and in real time and not go through tons of channels and deal with paperwork. It's 2020. There's no time for all that paperwork.
Interrupting time is up. We will now have to move on to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. I'm going to first turn to Ms. O'Casey for, sorry, Debbie.
You can call me Ms.
Douglas.
O'Casey
Ms.
anytime.
O'Casey. My apologies. Ms. Douglas, for my first question, you opened, Ms. Douglas, with the notion that children who age out because of the pandemic and the impact, and came up with an excellent suggestion about freezing the time in terms of the age. I'm also wondering, because many of the workers, such as the caregivers, who are required to fulfill the 2-year work requirement, and through no fault of their own, the pandemic has interrupted that work. Do you think that the government should count this interrupted time towards their 2-year work requirement so that they're not penalized through no fault of their own?
Absolutely. It is a concern we are hearing from care workers and others who are here on a pathway to permanent residence. Very much concerned that 2 years down the road, their children would have aged out. I think that given the, I would say 12, 18 months of the pause we're seeing because of COVID, it's already 8 months. We don't see the second stage ending until hopefully by summer. That time absolutely should be counted towards the time that caregivers are here.
Thank you. Turning to the parents, grandparents suggestions, I also appreciated your comments about the minimum wage requirements, the qualification and the impact, but as well as the lottery system. As you know, the government has only just announced the parents, grandparents program 10 months past since it was supposed to first start in January. And if Canada is to value the contributions of parents and grandparents, I believe you made a comment to say that the government should lift the cap and to allow for the application to come in and to be processed. I wonder if you can just elaborate on the value of that and the lifting of the cap and perhaps setting standards in terms of processing time and increasing resources in timely, expeditious processing.
Absolutely. All of our recommendations. One of the things that we have been trying to impress upon government is that parents and grandparents contribute to the social and economic settlement and integration of families. Grandparents in particular, not only are they cultural bridges, but they also support the families in terms of childcare, unpaid childcare. But more than that, they become a support to the family. This is especially important for women who are then better able to participate in the labor market. So it becomes a win-win-win for everyone, for the children, for the sponsors who are the children of the people who are being sponsored, and of course the parents and grandparents who are then reunified with their families. Removing the minimum necessary income will allow a larger group of people to be able to sponsor, and lifting the cap on parents and grandparents and increasing resources needed to process that can only lead to a better program. We've heard from families time and time again who have been waiting for sometimes over 10 years, and they have not just been able, whether or not it's the lottery system or, as you know, with the cap by January 1st, before the 10-month pause that we had, by January 1st, end of day, all of the numbers would have been taken up. So there are time and time again when folks were unable to get their application in. And with the lottery system, it is, the luck of the draw. So what we're saying is lift the cap, have people who are wanting to sponsor put in an application. Let's invest the resources to be able to process those applications in a timely manner. Because after all, parents and grandparents do contribute economically and socially.
Thank you. The Migrant Workers Alliance for Change has made a host of recommendations to support migrant workers. As we know, some of them have actually died in support of Canadians and putting food on our table. The government is only coming with a temporary a measure, a half measure, I would say, to apply for healthcare workers so that they can have lender status on arrival. Would you or so that they can have access to lender status. Would you agree that the government should, in fact, change our immigration policy to allow for migrant workers to have landed status on arrival. And given the fact that we're not going to meet our immigration levels numbers this year at all, we're not even going to come close to it, should we in fact be extending landed status to migrant workers who are already here and to other undocumented workers?
Yes, and we've had a number of discussions with Minister Mendocino on this, especially this is the time we believe where Canadians will be very supportive of putting in place a regularization program. We have a number of folks here who are undocumented or with precarious immigration status, especially migrant workers, not only those working in the healthcare field. And even with the announcement of that program, what we have impressed on the minister and IRCC is we're not only speaking about nurses and doctors, we also need to look at the orderlies and the cleaners who are keeping our hospitals and our long-term care homes going, who absolutely should have access to permanent residence, but also the people who are feeding us, right? The farm workers and other agricultural workers, the meat
Sorry
cutters.
for interrupting, Ms. Douglas. The time is up.
And all of those. So yes to
Sorry for interrupting,
workers.
Ms. Douglas. Your time is up. Sorry for interrupting. With this, the first round comes to an end, and now we will move on to second round. We have a little time constraint. We will end this panel at 5:10. So I would give Mr. Abultaif and Mr. Reagan 4 minutes each, and we will have Ms. Kwan and Ms. Domerdine have 2 minutes each. So we will just readjust the timing so that we can end the first panel at 5:10. So we will move on to Mr. Abultaif. Mr. Abultaif, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to Ms. Amiot, Ms. Douglas, and Ms. Terrain, as well as Mr. Davidson. I have a question. I would appreciate the input of all witnesses on it. And the question is, we know that Chinese intimidation on campuses and to students, it's something I do believe that is going to be increasing, isn't going to get better. The question to witnesses is this: is there a government plan to prevent that? And if you are aware of, we would appreciate advising us on it. Thank you. I guess I'll start with Mr. Davidson.
Sure, I'm happy to answer the question, and I really welcome the opportunity to discuss the changing geopolitical nature of these matters, and that the work that's being done on campuses to make sure that all students feel safe and secure in a whole range of areas. And so campuses have been working with their international students, with consular officials from a variety of countries, with student support folk on staff of campuses to identify what is actually happening, what's being alleged to happen, and what the best path forward are for that. And I think it's a worthwhile conversation for members of parliament to have and for others to have, but not to lose sight of the fact that the vast majority of international students and are active, productive citizens, students on campuses, and that they have a very successful experience while they're in Canada.
Ms. Amiot?
I will just add, for us, what is important is provide access for all. So it's very important that all students have the chance to study in Canada and be supported. And if campuses or if administrations or if students or witness of intimidation, it's up to them to mention this, and then measures are being taken. And this, of course, is because we support everybody, because we support no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. I think that's very important. And it's important not to single out any specific group.
Ms. Douglas?
Permettez-moi, Madame la Présidente, rappel à l'ordre.
Point of order. If Ms. Amiot could bring the mic higher up, that would be great. Interpreters are unable to work at this time.
Thank you for the question. Our member agencies who provide services are very mindful of creating safe spaces for all of their clients, and so create an opportunity for clients who may be vulnerable to exploitation are able to reach out in case that they're feeling the need for support.
And Ms. Terrain or Terrien?
Thank you. I believe Paul spoke well for the points that we would make as Universities Canada.
Okay. So what is the significance of a government policy or a plan to really combat the intimidation and to be able to really provide that protection that we need for our students, our international students? Again, to Mr. Davidson.
I'm not sure I heard the question fully. Could I ask you to repeat it?
The question is, what is a significant plan? What do you see significant of the government plan to prevent intimidation, to help preventing the situation from become more severe? And
sorry for interrupting. Your time is up.
Thanks.
We will now move on to Mr. Reagan. Mr. Reagan, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. Mr. Reagan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. We're all supposed to unmute, of course, before we speak. Excuse me. Ms. Douglas, first of all, thank you for staying a few more minutes past the time that you plan to leave, and I hope you can stay for perhaps the last 5 minutes or so here. You will know, of course, from the recent annual report of the department about its plan to pivot to immigration as an economic driver as part of the COVID recovery plan of the government for Canada. What are your thoughts on this decision, and how would you suggest that the government could better cooperate with settlement services to implement this plan as efficiently as possible?
Very good question. Thanks very much for this. As I was saying, given the restrictions of travel for COVID, the closing of embassies, what we are strongly encouraging the government to do is to look internally to identify the folks who are here with precarious immigration status, those who are undocumented, and create a pathway for them to have their status regularized. Settlement services are ready to act as proxy. We know that there will be some hesitation of the people coming forward unless there are clear guarantees that they will not be deported before they have a fair trial and hearing. We expect the government to put clear guidance in place, and as I said, to work with our community-based organizations to support the individuals, but also to support the government in reaching those communities. We absolutely support the government's focus on immigration as our response, as an economic response that has always been true. It will continue to be true for Canada, both economic and demographically speaking. And so what we're saying is that there are people doing during the thing in our long-term care home.
Sorry for interrupting. I think there is some connectivity
or they're
issue.
cleaning or driving our trucks. So they've certainly gone to Canada, and we believe that this is important, and I have an unstable connection. So we believe that the time is right for the government to put in place some sort of regularization program.
Thank you very much, Ms. Douglas. I appreciate you continuing through this difficulty with the technology or the connection, but mostly you're coming through clearly. There's seem to be pauses at times, but so I want to stick with you for a moment. You'll be aware, I think, that the Minister Mendicino, directed his department to use creative ways to harness residents already in the country to increase levels. And one example of this is that people temporarily in Canada have been encouraged or are being encouraged to transition to permanent residency. How do you see these models working out?
We have experience of this in Canada. I believe it was in the early to mid 1980s was the last regularization program. It was a huge success. As I said, we have a number of folks here who are wanting to stay in Canada, going through seasonal agricultural workers program, who've been coming in and out of Canada for sometimes 15, 20 years. We have folks who are refugee claimants who have been waiting. and the process should be expedited for them. We have temporary foreign workers working in our health field. They are also wanting permanent residence. We have caregivers, as we spoke about earlier with MP Kwan, who are wanting their process regularized. So we have a number of folks who are here. With a clear process, with the support of community-based organizations, including faith communities, I believe that it is time, the time is ripe for us to put a regularization program in place to meet our immigration numbers that was recently announced by Minister Mendocino.
That's my time.
Thank you. We will now move to Ms. Normandin. Ms. Normandin, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I will ask one question to Ms. Terrien, Ms. Amiot. We heard that it's more difficult for Francophone students to come to Quebec. Sometimes they have their CAQ, sometimes they have received scholarships. They already have a spot, but the federal government is saying no and does not deliver the visa. Should the federal government give more points or give the permit more quickly once it has already been approved by the university? Well, the process should be sped up and measures need to be put in place. We talked about the biometric issue. That is a recurrent issue, and often students are accepted, but they're accepted once the semester is halfway done. It's too late. So Francophone countries must have offices that are functioning. Otherwise, we will not be able to meet the targets or the percentages that we would like to see. We have to remember that for international students represent $22 billion in Canada. That is more than the automobile sector, and that is more than the forestry sector as well. I would like to keep some time for Mr. Amiot to answer as well, please. Of course. Ms. Amiot? I was looking for the right button. Thank you, Ms. Normandin. I would like to add to what was said by Ms. Amiot. Both levels of government must work well together.
Now we will move to our last round of questioning where Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 2 minutes. Ms. Douglas, you were saying something?
I was about to leave, but
Okay. Yeah, we just have last, if you can stay for 2 minutes.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah,
yes, sure.
Okay, Ms. Kwan, you have 2 minutes.
You're muted.
Ms. Kwan.
Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Ms. Douglas, I'll quickly ask you this question. With respect to refugees, right now, of course, we have the border restrictions. And so many of the refugees are not able to enter into Canada. Do you think that Canada should live or provide the exemption to refugees and then also apply the health measures in terms of quarantine and what have you to ensure that Canadians are safe?
Absolutely. We've said to the minister that folks who are in search of a safe haven or seeking asylum, regardless of the pandemic, they need asylum. And so we're asking the government to allow folks to come in, especially those who are government sponsored. We've seen the few who have trickled in over the last 8 months have been able to quarantine safely in hotel spaces or in our refugee houses where there is space. The folks who are providing the services are very mindful in terms of our health protocols. I think that we have to open our borders to government-assisted refugees as well as our privately sponsored refugees. COVID COVID cannot be an excuse for closing our borders to asylum seekers.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly turn to Mr. Davidson. You know, on the post-secondary education side and the international students, many of the post-grad students who are already here are having a tough time because of the time-restricted post-grad work permits to which they're required to complete 12 to 24 months of high-wage or high-skill work. Because of the pandemic, that work has been clearly impacted. Some of them are going to run out of time and their work permit is going to expire. Do you think that the government should automatically renew their work permit so that they can have the extra time to complete their work requirements?
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Your time is up.
Can I just get a quick yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry for that. With this, our first panel comes to an end. Thank you to all the witnesses, and special thanks to Ms. Douglas for, I know you had to leave, but really appreciate your staying longer with us. So if you have, you can stay with us, but if any of the first panelists people have to leave, they can leave also. And now we will move to our second panel. We will start.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your important input. resume. I call the meeting to the order. Now we will start with our second panel. Thanks to all the witnesses for appearing before us today as we do the important work on the study of the impact of COVID-19 on the immigration system. We will start with our first witness, Madame Bergeron. Madame Bergeron, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
My story is the story of thousands of Canadians. My name is Emmanuel Bergeron. I never planned to fall in love with a man living abroad. On July 7th, 2017, I met a cab driver, and his name was Ernesto Davalas Urbizo. At the end of my stay, he looked me in the eyes and told me that he hoped we would meet again one day. We fell in love. In February of 2018, I told him the good news that he would be a dad. I was close to my 40s. I didn't believe that dream was possible anymore. We saw our future take place. We consulted a lawyer to apply for a temporary visa. We planned to return to Cuba when the baby was 2 months old, and this gave us time to prepare the application for permanent residence. And everything was provided. It was May 2018 that we received a rejection. On July 11th, 2018, in Veradero, we married in front of friends, and we tried to do everything to bring our family together. But a few days later, we received a second refusal for Ernesto to be with me during the birth of our son. I was 6 months pregnant, and I had to say goodbye to my husband again at the apartment. I returned to Canada with my family and friends, but without my husband. The government denied my husband the right to attend the birth of his son under the pretext that he had ties with me. So we had not been able to convince the Canadian immigration officer that he would go back to his country. I paid for and completed and submitted the application on July 30th, 2018. My son, Lucas, was born in October of 2018, and his father found out about it by video conference. The department opened our sponsorship application in November of 2018, and the long wait had just begun. My son and I traveled. During the time, we heard nothing from the department, and Ernesto took his son in his arms for the first time when his son was 2 months old. In July of 2019, 1 year after the filing the application, we asked to undergo medical tests, and under normal circumstances, the response should have taken 25 days, but I received the document 5 months later, another document that delayed the progress of our file. Time was passing, and our financial resources were running out. After a year and a half of waiting, we got a letter from the department asking us if our love was authentic. On February 18th, we finally received the Welcome to Canada letter. We were so relieved, but on March 19th, I received a letter saying that they still hadn't received the results of the medical test, which made me very angry. My husband was tested in Trinidad and Tobago in August of last year. Since Cuba has no designated doctors and the services at the Canadian Embassy have shrunk, I had to pay for a trip, which was an extra $4,000. I've sent all the supporting documents issued by the medical clinic. I sent them out 3 times, but it did not appear on the department's dashboard. We don't know what happened. We never got any answers. Then the borders closed after COVID, and I'm exhausted. I don't think I'm strong enough to go through another separation at the airport. Ernesto has been able to hug and kiss his son for only about 15 weeks over the last 2 years. We've sent in all the documents. We've met all the requirements. We paid all the fees. The last time Ernesto hugged his son was in January of this year, over 315 days ago. I'm exhausted. I'm on the verge of depression. I cry every time my 2-year-old son says, "Daddy, Daddy," and wants to speak to him on the phone. I cry every morning because I'm far away from my husband. The government has stolen precious moments from me. I'm past the anger stage. I want to cry out the injustice I've suffered. Other people who were in line behind me got their papers earlier. I can't believe that a country that values family values has abandoned us. Mr. Mendocino and Mr. Trudeau, would you accept to be far from your wife when she was giving birth to your child? How can an immigration officer decide that a father is not allowed to attend the birth of his son? Thousands of Canadians have to deal with the unfairness and lack of transparency of and random decisions of immigration officers.
You'll get an opportunity in the round of questioning to speak further on the issue. Now we will move on to Mr. Jatin Shori. Mr. Shori, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks.
Madam Chair, honorable committee members, thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration this afternoon. Again, my name is Jatin Shori, and I am an immigration and refugee lawyer working at Shori Law in Calgary, Alberta. It is my understanding that the committee is currently studying the impact of COVID-19 on Canada's immigration system. I believe this inquiry is an important step in the right direction. I suspect that the committee members have received a variety of perspectives and suggestions over the course of this exercise. Now, it was only 7 months ago when the Canadian government began to announce significant steps to contain and manage an unpredictable timeline due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. In my world, that of immigration, it began with significant border closures and restrictions on travel, resulting in thousands of families becoming separated. Internally, application processing was halted and hearings at various courts and tribunals paused. The world of immigration law subsequently became a process of staying up to date with further directions from the government, policy announcements, and interpreting orders and counsels being issued at times on a weekly basis. Around this time, I had just won a matter at the Immigration Appeal Division by consent from the Minister's Council. My client's had sponsored wife in this application had been refused. He was a father of 3, and his family application had been refused via an interview of his wife that he did not even get a chance to participate in. After this win, of course, my client was ecstatic. His wife's file, however, was being managed to the High Commission of Canada office out of London. Then COVID hit, and his file remains at a standstill today. My client had 3 children with his wife, and yet the genuineness of his marriage was still being questioned. He has now been waiting for almost 3 years for his family to reunite in Canada. Most of the phone calls or advice I gave for the first few months following the lockdowns were largely around, how do I bring back my spouse? How do I reunite with my partner? Why is the airline not letting my family board when they have all the documentation the government says they need? It became clear that family reunification, which is among the objectives of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, would need to become a priority. This left a lasting impression on me as a professional, and I continue to observe what solutions the government was presenting for the future of immigration to Canada. Family reunification is at the forefront for many Canadians and permanent residents. There have been homegrown movements by Canadians and permanent residents demanding more transparency on why their applications to reunite with their loved ones had been halted, and this was covered extensively by the media, continues to be today as well. The government responded by confirming the allocation of more resources to the processing of overseas applications. I applaud these efforts. Many of my clients who are in the final stages of their processing are now beginning to receive their passport requests. However, what will happen to the thousands of families who have been picked for interviews that in reality have no specified timeline to resume? One of my clients came out of a very abusive relationship. She had a child out of this relationship. Culturally, she struggled with gaining independence and confidence to move forward in her life in these conditions. She found a life partner and overcame the adversity faced by women in her circumstances. We were told that interviews were going to be set for summer 2020. Obviously, that did not happen, and my client remains lost as to when she could begin the next chapter of her life. In a time where Canada is beginning to evaluate a more efficient system of processing applications that maintains integrity, I believe it is imperative that IRCC also take this as an opportunity to go back to the drawing board on how overseas applications are being processed and selected for interviews. It is imperative that IRCC take this opportunity to consider the following reforms. 1, speeding up the interview and application process, and 2, introducing new forms of training for immigration officers to make them more attuned to the parties' physical and mental conditions as well as their social and cultural backgrounds. The backlog of file processing will definitely result in families being separated for unjustifiable periods because of the current system. The movement towards electronic solutions is apparent and required in 2020. However, some of the most family reunification pathways available today continue with the status quo from previous years. The paper filing of humanitarian compassionate applications, spousal sponsorship applications, and even temporary resident permits, and also the need for wet signatures. The use of technology can be further instilled in the interview process. Virtual interviews are a solution to an anticipated backlog of processing. It is a process that has been smoothly incorporated at the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada. If we can introduce artificial intelligence at various visa processing centers overseas, then why can we not bring forward a solution like this as well? Canada is a leader when it comes to global immigration. We need to continue to demonstrate that through this pandemic. Thank you again, and I invite further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shori. Thanks for your opening remarks. Now we will move on to Mr. Falconer, representing Alliance Canada Hong Kong. Mr. Falconer, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. And I assume that you are sharing your time with Ms. Chan. You are on mute, Mr. Falconer.
Thank you to the committee for inviting me to come here. It's an honor and a pleasure to be able to present with STARS and Alliance Canada Hong Kong. The topic of today actually goes along with Mr. Shori about the idea of timeliness and flexibility when it comes to the processing of applications for refugee claimants, for immigrants and others. And while we do come here in a group that's focused on Hong Kongers, recommendations that we make would be very similar and would broadly impact the larger immigrant and refugee community. Historically, our system has not been flexible. Since 2000, we've had three periods where large numbers of claims within Canada, and each time it has taken several years for the Immigration and Refugee Board to catch up to be able to process those claims. In COVID-19, this is, by the way, the same with the most recent rise in refugee numbers since about 2016, and still our system continues to try to climb or to catch up. With the advent of COVID-19, the faults in the processing pipeline, as it were, continue to have real human impacts. I was looking at some data today. To me, what was quite apparent was that since March 20, only about 44% of all the refugee claims period have been referred to the IRB for a hearing date. That's in comparison to 88% in the same period last year. And while we can certainly understand why the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic would exacerbate the ability to process and refer refugee claims, we have to understand that there are human lives in the mix here that are unable to access work permits, stay with status here in Canada, unable to access social services, who are impacted by those wait times. Likewise, it presents a into especially the provinces who are having to, who rightfully so have to the lives of refugee claimants while their claims are in process. In addition to this, international students have found it very difficult to make the transition from graduation to and into the Canadian economic immigration system. A graduate education program will find that despite efforts to study in Canada, to excel academically, and to find work afterwards through no fault of their own, but only because of the economic circumstances that surround them, they will be unable to gain the points necessary to qualify them for our economic immigration system. And so with those, we would like to make several recommendations. The first would be that Canada adopts a 5-year postgraduate work permit, similar to the Australian model just adopted for Hong Kongers. This would allow international students in Canada who graduated from our system more time to gain work experience in Canada. Second, it would allow them to, for those who are fleeing or who are here from countries from oppressive regimes, the situation in Hong Kong right now, to give them more time to find safety within Canada, and if needs be, access to the refugee claim system. Finally, be the transition to term visa program. Right now, refugee claimants or students or graduate workers who are transitioning out of one permit to another, whose expires in the meantime, on an implied status that is unclear for many employers, these students and workers themselves. The new model on the by hand offers an interim visa program that immediately upon applying for an extension or a change of status in the visa, issues them an interim visa that will last until the New Zealand government gets back to them with their new work or study or visitor permit. Finally, we believe that investments into our immigrant refugee system pay dividends, both in humanitarian acts as well as to the management of our immigration refugee system. An aspect here that will be presented by my associate Staris, that the delays in processing of work permits, study permits, and refugee claim referrals has a real impact, causing stress, financial difficulty, ability to access social services. Thank you. Pass the time over to Staris.
You have 45 seconds.
Oh, thank you for letting me speak here today. I'm an international student from Hong Kong, and also a student activist for the democratic movement. Today, I'm here to speak about my experience. We all know that Hong Kong is not safe for student activists anymore. However, here in Canada, Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Hong Kong student activists are being intimidated and harassed by pro-Beijing supporters. We worry our activists is documented and it might lead to potential prosecution for us and our families. And sincerely hope that the government will implement immigration and asylum measures as soon as possible. It's stressful for international students and their family to tackle COVID-19, Canada's immigration system, and also worry about their safety at the same time. I wanted to go back to
Ms. Chan, sorry for interrupting. Your time is up. You will get an opportunity to speak about the issues you want to raise during the round of questioning. So with that, I would thank all the witnesses for their opening testimonies. Now we will move on to our first round of questioning. Ms. Dencho will start. Ms. Dencho, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. It's great to see these expert opinions on the witness stand today. So greatly appreciate your time. Ms. Chan, what you were just touching on there when your time ran out, I'd like you to elaborate a little bit. Specifically, has the government, and Mr. Faulkner, you can chime in on this as well, has the government really made any promises or had any communications with you regarding when or if they're going to bring forward a more robust asylum and refugee program in response to the rapidly deteriorating situation in Hong Kong?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the new policy for the Hong Kongers immigration policy personally will help me to obtain a PR here. However, the policy is also unclear as many Hong Kongers are inquiring about the measure. And I urge the government to clarify the details of the measure.
Mr. Faulkner, did you have anything to add to that? Are you aware of any upcoming, or have they communicated with you anything about a possible refugee or asylum system for Hong Kongers that wasn't announced on last week?
Not as of yet.
Okay.
So far in their early coming year, but I think I agree with Ms. Chan in that I think especially with regards to this situation, clear communication needs to be had with regards to who is eligible and when this program will roll out.
Okay, thank you. And are you concerned that the government's recent announcement for Hong Kong leaves out, say, grandparents or older individuals who do not have post-secondary education, or perhaps those who don't have the economic means to obtain post-secondary education?
Yes, absolutely. Those are the two big gaps I've noted when I read the announcement. Well, I think the announcement is a first step. It's an insufficient one in that when regards to humanitarian intervention, which is really what this is, I can understand the desire to immediately present something for highly qualified students. And again, I applaud those measures, but it leaves out very large gaps for grandparents, for extended family members who might not qualify, and for those who do not have a post-secondary education within the recent past. And I don't know the exact timeline, but is that the recent graduate qualification for these programs, I believe, is within the past 5 years they would have had
That's correct, yeah.
A program. And so left there.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Just want to get your comments on some other actions or actions from other countries concerning Hong Kong. How do you feel that the recent Canadian immigration announcement compares to actions taken by UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson?
Certainly the more robust program. There, with regards to former a special type of or certain Hong Kongers hold that are able to qualify for Britain. One thing I will note, similar to the Canadian program, is that there has been no specific on behalf of the UK government about when they're going to move forward on a lot of these immigration measures. The group that program, again, is a lot more expansive compared to the Canadian immigration program. I would say, though, that the big thing is here not having clear details about when this program is going to roll out, and it's much more limited focus on the groups that are eligible for it under the Canadian system.
Thank you. And I guess further to that, then the government, has promised expedited service for Hong Kong nationals. Do you think it's important that they commit to service standards, for example, publicly? Given we've heard a lot about on this committee alone today about the delays. Do you think that it's important that they commit to deadlines for the announcement that they made?
I would say, yes, service are absolutely vital. We've other research around other jurisdictions, various migration agencies and other allies and friends of Canada showing that service standards do help improve timeliness. But the big thing also as well is there needs to be an upfront investment in staff training, sufficient staff capacity in order to process these. One thing I'll made in my opening testimony here is that we have a very reactive refugee claim system that tends to play catch up, and that's not to any government. That's actually something that's consistent over the past 20 years. There has been a spike in claims during this period, and we've played catch up for about 2 years. And that has human, again, it has a fiscal impact as well on the jurisdiction supporting them.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. And just so we have about a minute and a half left, so I'll just ask, my understanding is that there's a number of individuals that have had their travel documents seized in Hong Kong. What do you believe can be done for them? Like that was not mentioned or included at all in the Liberal announcement last week.
I'd say one thing is actually, is that one of the members of this committee here, Ms. Kwan, recommended revival of the source country refugee system. This is an older refugee resettlement program that would help what we would call DPs, or internally displaced persons, people who are in places like Hong Kong, or let's say there was a family trapped within Iraq or others. It allowed us to resettle them in Canada. And with that refugee comes something very important, is that we're able to actually issue travel documents for that individual, which would passport. And so I think short and maybe long-term, reviving the source country refugee resettlement system to provide them with travel documents to come to Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Ms. Chan, did you have anything to add? We have about 20 seconds left.
I would like to have 20 seconds to talk about my story. So I think so many international students have spoken up already. There's a lack of clear information about immigration rules and policies. And as migrants, we are when we miss that line, the consequences are very serious. As a Hong Kong student, I benefit for the new measure. However,
Ms. Chen, sorry for interrupting. The time is up. We will now move on to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the presenters. My questions will go to Jatin. Jatin, first of all, my apologies for not being part of your wedding celebration, even though your auntie, my wife Ronnie, was there. All the best to you and your wife in the coming years. Jatin, the business you are in and the area you're coming from, I'm sure you are hearing the same things that I do. If we look at prior to 2015 and moving forward to 2021, when it comes to parents and grandparents, the number of applications that we can take has six-folded, from 5,000 applications all the way to 30,000 applications, and also increasing the age of the dependent child from 18 to 22. And last year, in 2019, the number of spousal and parents and grandparents crossed 27% of the immigration was from that category. And also when particularly comes to the wait times, from several years for the parents and grandparents to 2 years, and from almost over 2 years for the spousal applications to 1 year. That is the reduction in the wait time. And also to reduce these wait times, which were historically inherited, and because of the COVID, we are also going to process 49,000 spousal applications by end of December. I would like you to comment on how do you see these developments to reduce the backlog that was inherited historically and because of the COVID, and also the level of the number of applications that we are going to accept.
Mr. Dhaliwal, sir, thank you for the question, and you were missed at the wedding as well, so no worries there. I'll speak to parent-grandparent first, and then we'll talk about the spousal sponsorship application. So, with respect to the parent-grandparent applications right now, it's great that they're still being accepted. It's great that the procedure is still being, and the program is still in play, but it's a bit confusing just because for me, look, last year we had the first come, first serve situation, and it was pretty obvious. I think within 7 minutes, the entire portal shut down. It was quite devastating for a lot of our clients as well who were trying to get some help. It was really devastating for people who didn't have adequate internet connection, couldn't type as quickly as other people. And it's my understanding that the government had to settle a number of cases as well due to human rights concerns that were brought up. So I can understand why the government may have decided this year to revert back to a lottery system. It's a system that I think prior to last year's program was a system that ultimately has some form of consistency based on programs that have existed before. But at the same time, this year, I guess it was 10,000 applications or interest to sponsor forms that will be selected, and I guess it's 30,000 next year. I'm not too sure if that is the best system moving forward. I know that this is not the first committee meeting, and I know there have been a number of suggestions by senior colleagues in the space who have suggested we did lottery systems, for example. I mean, that's something that should probably be explored in today's day and age. It's something that even clients have asked us when they come in, talking about the different types of ways that they have been considered. People have been waiting 5-10 years just to sponsor their parents. With respect to the spousal sponsorship applications, frankly, I'm really confused because 49,000 and 49,000 spousal sponsorship applications being processed. My question is, how many are going to be successful, and what kind of mechanisms, safeguards are being put into evaluating the way that discretion of visa officers are being exercised, and the way that they're actually looking into and evaluating the genuineness of marriage or the primary purpose of the application. Ms. Bergeron's story is unfortunately not unique, and it's something that a number of my clients come in the door sharing with us. So I'm curious to see how that plays out, and again, those are my concerns here today.
Second question I'm going to ask you is about the temporary workers that are here. Every day I'm in the constituency or on the media, radio station or TV station. One question is asked because they have a petition going and they want to see if we can increase the number of permanent immigrants from these temporary work permits, even though 22% of the immigration in 2019 was from this category. Would you have suggestions how the government can improve so as those people can be given chance to become permanent Canadians?
Quick 30-second answer.
Sure. Sir, I'm not a policy guy. Ultimately, 2019 numbers are pre-COVID and post-COVID. I think that's the purpose of this study from the get-go. And so I don't know if I have any suggestions necessarily, but I know a lot of colleagues, lawyers and non-lawyers, can see that the obvious solution here is looking at our friends, our neighbors, people who are here already, and just kind of figuring out quicker ways of helping them achieve that status.
Yeah, I would like to ask.
Mr. Dhaliwal, your time is up.
Can I request something from the panelists, please?
Your time is up. I think we will have to move to the next person.
Sure.
Now we will move on to Ms. Normandine. Ms. Normandine, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Many of my questions will be for Ms. Bergeron, because we have someone who really has gone through the ringer. As a lawyer, I've seen several cases, but I think we should let you speak more to what you've gone through. When your application for a visa was turned down, what answer did you get? Were you given grounds or reasons why the application was rejected, or did you get a generic answer? I got a generic answer. I was told it's for reasons of 179B because of the he didn't have enough money here. But that's not true because I had set aside enough money to support him. And we were also told that he could go back to Cuba, but once there, Cuba would not let him come back. Once we put in the application, our lawyer built a solid case. We bought our plane tickets. We did everything Canada required of us. We had explained that Ernesto would only come to see his son be born, but that was rejected. How could an immigration or a customs official, an immigration official, reject that kind of request? I don't understand. What's going on? Why could a father not see his son be born? You said you got generic answers. What does that say about the transparency of the Department of Immigration? There is no transparency. I've lost confidence in the system. And when I went to Havana, I was 5 months pregnant. I picked up the second rejection. I was furious. I shouted. I asked to enter the embassy. They finally let me in. The agent spoke a little bit of English, and I was told that I didn't pay the permanent residency fees, the $1,500. Well, I didn't pay whether I was going to pay that amount. Nevertheless, we were told that this father could not see his son being born. They said, make your application for a permanent residency and then ask for a temporary visa. I said, do you know how much it costs to put in these applications and to get the translations done? We're talking thousands of dollars. You said that one of the reasons you were given is that Ernesto might not have gone back to Cuba. Would you have encouraged Ernesto to stay here after his visa ran out? No, not at all. We simply wanted the family to meet the baby. We really wanted to follow all the rules. We simply wanted to allow Ernesto to travel between the both countries. We wanted to raise our children in both cultures. I want my child to spend as much time in Cuba as in Canada. I just wanted us to be able to go back and forth for our child to experience the values of both countries. Now, Ernesto is not in Canada. He can't be a husband to you. At the end of the process, you were asked to prove that this is a legitimate relationship. Do you think that this prevents you from living your marriage abroad? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I was close to 40. I had one child, and I wanted to have a second child, but I'm 41, and because of Canada's immigration system, I will not have a second child. I'm 41. I'll be too old to have a second child. So the Department of Immigration refused my husband the opportunity to see the birth of his son, and now the department is preventing me from having a second child. I don't understand. This leads me to my next question. The fact that the department lost the medical papers, the doctors who carried out the test could send the results again, but by that point, the deadline would have been passed. Don't you think the department could have admitted it made a mistake and pushed back the deadline? Well, the medical tests are not valid as of August 1. I asked for an extension. I reached out, but I did not get any answers. The department said it's just overloaded with work. Well, normally we don't ask questions as lawyers for which we don't know the answer, but I'll do that now. If you had known from the very outset everything you would gone through, would you have gone through the same thing again, or would you have done anything differently? I would have still gone ahead with my decision. I wouldn't have changed anything. I followed all the rules. I did everything the government asked me to do. I traveled. I did everything I could. I spent so much money. I would do it all again. And I'm still hoping that Ernesto could be with us one day. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think I have any more time left. Thank you, Madame Bergeron.
And now we will move on to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for their presentation. I'm first going to go to Mr. Faulkner and Ms. Chan on the issue around Hong Kongers who are trying to get to safety. The government actually made an announcement last week. However, in that announcement, there are no provisions or measures, if you will, for people who are in Hong Kong right now to seek refuge to Canada. So there's no refugee stream that was announced by the minister. Would you say that it is absolutely essential, given the dire situation in Hong Kong, that the government brings in a special measure for the people of Hong Kong through the refugee stream?
Yes, absolutely. I say, going back to the example, there's something like a source country measure where we are able to recognize somebody's refugee status within their home country to come to Canada. And I would say there's actually precedent. The biggest example from recent years was the Rainbow Railroad program, which allowed Canada to resettle LGBTQ individuals from places like Chechnya and Iran to come directly to Canada and find safety here. And so something that either exempts them under policy options or creates a new stream like country refugee resettlement stream is absolutely essential to help Hong Kongers and others who may be trapped in their countries, unable to access travel documents, to come to Canada.
Thank you very much. With respect to the people of Hong Kong, the minister actually mentioned family reunification. As we know, family reunification is only restricted to spouse and dependents, or partners and dependents, if you will, and in a very limited capacity, parents, grandparents, and already we know is by the luck of the draw. So this year that avenue is already closed, actually, so we would not apply for the people of Hong Kong in any event. And so we used to have a program where extended family members could sponsor each other to come. In fact, my own family, we were sponsored by my aunt to come to Canada. Would you say that the government should expand the family reunification stream to go beyond spouse or partners and dependents, and to allow for siblings and other extended families to sponsor each other to come to Canada?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to fish here and share my own family's experience. Is that my own father was a refugee resettled in Chile in the 1970s, Canada, and members of our family were able to come together under a similar program. And this, I think, takes a longer term view of what immigration and refugee status should look like in Canada for Hong Kongers and for others. And I see a justifiable public consideration or even a humanitarian preventing the application and admission of extended family members. I think it actually would be to the benefit of those families and to Hong Kongers and more generally to have extended families here supporting each other in child support, helping each other out, and providing a refuge.
Turning to the student stream, the government's program primarily centered around students, and they are extremely restrictive. And they have completely, for example, left out young people who might not be engaged with the post-secondary education system. I'm aware that some of the students are in fact in high school who are faced with potential persecution. And of course, there are those who are not engaged in the system at all in terms of post-secondary education. It also doesn't mean to say that they won't face persecution. So to that end, what do you think the government should do to ensure that those who also face the same kind of persecution as post-secondary education students would have access and means to come to Canada for safety?
A bit like a broken record here, but I think it is a good question. international students, again, is the ability to recognize in-country asylum, that source country stream, and to provide exemptions to public policy from current regulations that exist here in Canada. And very specific example of Hong Kong students that recently tried to flee to Taiwan by boat were by law enforcement and returned to Canada. These are young students where they're fleeing on boat, which is something that we are very familiar with here in Canada, resettling refugees from countries who they themselves have had to do that. So I think kind of going back, I think any new measures are good. I applaud the current government for doing that, but I think we need to look at the major gaps that are left. Are students with less formal education, students might be past that 5-year period, their extended family members.
Just turning very quickly, the focus on, I should say, the government's website actually notes that taking part in the Hong Kong protest, that there's no guarantee that charges for rioting that are laid, or arrests that are laid would not apply or would not disqualify them from accessing the immigration process here in Canada. So should the Canadian government also exempt other potential criminality issues such as rioting or protesting in peaceful assembly prior to the national security law?
Yes, I think we need to understand the circumstances that protest, especially what we might rioting, we might call.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Faulkner. The time is up. We will have to now move to the second round of questioning. In order to end the session around 6:10, we will have in the second round 4 minutes each for Mr. Hallen and Ms. Martinez Parada, and 2 minutes each for Ms. Normadine and Ms. Kwan. So we will start with Mr. Hallen. Mr. Hallen, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming today before our meeting. Ms. Bergeron, let me just start by saying thank you for the courage it took you to share your experience. We've heard through our offices the many heartbreaking and gut-wrenching stories, unfortunately, that are much the same. I want to ask you, Ms. Bergeron, did you ever try reaching out to your MP in regards to the situation? If you did, would you mind sharing what kind of experience you had or what they said and who they are?
Yes, I tried to contact my MP, the MP for La Salle, Mr. Lametti. 4 times I contacted him. It did not really give any results. He said he could not help me. He represented the executive power. He was sorry about my situation, and that's it. And 4 times I got this kind of answers.
Your experience with the MP's office, and thank you again for sharing your experience with us. I want to highlight again the family reunification, because now more than ever, especially now we see so many advocacy groups doing so much amazing work to bring it to light with the pandemic and the current system. There's so much urgency in getting people reunified. Mr. Shorey, you highlighted some points about families that get picked for interviews without any specific timeline. We heard through Ms. Bergeron's statement that these delays have a real life impact on people's personal lives, like missed birthdays and holidays. Mental and physical health are so important now, and they're being impacted by all these delays. In your experience, can you share some other people's experiences and what you think we can do to improve these interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir, for the question. Very quickly, when we go to the Immigration Appeal Division, for example, to appeal some of these decisions, we get records. Everything should be recorded, even at the visa offices. This, I think, will really help streamline and clarify where issues were at the interview and allow people like ourselves and Minister's Council to come to a resolution quicker. The second issue is I don't understand why we don't have video conferencing technology available yet. I'd say 90% of my clients, especially where the spouse who's sponsored is in Canada, they just don't have the means to go for the interview. And so ultimately, their testimony and their opinion, where perhaps they could have clarified certain issues, is just left out. I think those are two very quick and obvious responses that could ultimately help just make this process a little more efficient and ultimately help families reunite. We're around the corner from Christmas, and a lot of families. I just celebrated Diwali this weekend with my family, and I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not be able to celebrate that with my family members if I was in a similar position like that. So those are just two quick, I think, solutions that exist and are just really easy to implement.
Thank you for that, Mr. Shorey. I also wanted to ask you, the spousal sponsorship program has been criticized for its delays, even prior to the pandemic for the past 5 years. And, some people are in very vulnerable positions. Would you like to share what you would like to recommend to this government in order to address some of these really impactive delays on spousal sponsorships?
Sure. I think being more transparent with the applicants or their authorized user, their authorized representative helps. The number of times we've emailed.
Mr. Shorey, sorry for interrupting. Your time is up.
No problem. Thank you.
Now we will move on to Ms. Martinez Farada. Ms. Martinez Farada, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll do this in English so we can probably do this better because I think translation, we have an issue with translation. My question will be first to Mr. Shorey. Could you give us your opinion on the dual intent instruction given to the visa officers that we did last week, 2 weeks actually? And can you tell us how do you think that will respond, like the system will respond to these updates? I think it will be something that Mrs. Bergeron will also be interested in. And I'll have, if you keep that short, so I can have a question to Mr. Falconer after that. Thank you.
Sure. My short answer is I'm not too sure what the expectation was by releasing those instructions, because ultimately dual intent has been in the law for quite some time now. And so if anything, for me as a lawyer, this just further further confirmed what I already knew in terms of how dual intent is assessed. And so one of the questions asked, what's your intention? Like, can you prove that you can go back home or prove that you will go back home if your application is denied for permanent residency? And there's nothing novel, I think, by bringing forward these delivery instructions. It's just something that's existed for a long time, and I think I'd leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you read the instructions that we gave out 2 weeks ago. My other question to Mr. Falconer would be, and thank you again, all of you, for your testimony. Madame Bergeron, merci pour votre témoignage aujourd'hui.
Madame Bergeron, thank you for your testimony today.
Factors in choosing these measures for Hong Kongers were that we saw the Hong Kong applications for work and study permit greatly increasing over time. The choices to strengthen those paths already been used by Hong Kongers. So, as well as providing the choice to remain permanently, we're deliberately in providing what we call the parallel aid. So are these additional ways you see in immigration taking action to help the people of Hong Kong? Is there other things that you see that we should be doing?
Yes, and thank you for the question. Very short, I would look towards what we are doing internally here in Canada to help Hong Kongers and others who are currently in Canada who may be at risk of losing their status. Currently, Canada right now only offers up to a 3-year postgraduate work permit program. I think there is good reason to suggest that given the current economic circumstances and the uncertain situation in Hong Kong, we might want to extend that to a 5-year postgraduate work permit process, similar again to the Australian model. 2 would be to adopt the interim visa policy of New Zealand. What this means that currently when somebody applies for an extension or change in their immigration status, if their current permit expires in the meantime, they are under what's called implied status, meaning they are here in Canada with status, but there isn't necessarily a clear record of that. In New Zealand, when somebody does that, the New Zealand government actually issues them automatically a paper interim permit that provides proof to their employer, proof to themselves, etc. Those would be the ones that I would look to here in Canada. Again, the extension of the postgraduate work permit period. Also, just to help them be able to find work that both sustains their livelihoods as well as adds to their points for their long-term eligibility for our economic immigration system. And as a last-ditch effort, also keeps the door open for our refugee claim system should they feel the need to.
Ms. Martinez Farada?
I think we lost Mr. Faulkner. How much time do I have left, Madam Chair?
20 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to have his thought around what he thought about the measures, the package. Sorry, Mr. Faulkner, we lost you there. So,
okay.
Sorry. I just wanted to have your thoughts around the package of measures that we announced a couple of days ago, and but I don't think we won't have time for your answer.
Sorry, the time is up. We will have to end this now we will move on to Ms. Normandine. Ms. Normandine, you have 2 minutes for your questioning.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. My question is for Mr. Faulkner as well. I would like to come back to what Ms. Kwan said. Carles Puigdemont from Catalonia could not travel because he was arrested because he participated in the organization of a political referendum. People in Hong Kong can also be arrested because they protest on a political topic, for example, the national security law. So are people afraid that people in Hong Kong will not receive their electronic travel authorization? And those measures that were announced by the government, are they real or are they superficial?
Vous êtes sur
Mr. Faulkner, you are on mute.
2020 motto. The first question is that yes, criminal inadmissibility, the potential to be barred from Canada for participating in, let's say, a riot, for another government might call it a riot, is absolutely a concern of the Hong Kong community and many others in the world who are charged because their government deems their political activity to be in contravention of their laws. And I think that that is one measures, and more generally, we need to consider that not all countries are going to have an equal interpretation of what illegal political participation is, but why they're in Hong Kong or elsewhere. And that Canada needs to make it clear and actually we do have a precedent in this that we judge for criminal activity based on our own laws and activities, and that issues like that what's happening in Hong Kong would not be held against them. Second answer.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Faulkner. Your time is up. Now we will move to Ms. Kwan, and with that, we will end the round of questioning. Ms. Kwan, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to Mr. Shorey for a minute. We're talking about the dual intent issue and what was published on the website. My office actually phoned the Ministerial Inquiries Division and spoke to an agent, and here's what they said. He knows that it's essentially an internal memo issued by RCC. It provides clarification to assist in interpreting dual intent, but is not considered an actual policy. It is just the practice and the guide to understand what dual intent is, but it is not there to help make a decision. Ultimately, it's up to the officer's decision and for the applicant to still convince the officer that they will leave once the visa expires. That's how I read that as well, and I think that's your understanding of it. And so if there's any interpretation of somehow there's a directive or a policy from the government, I think is incorrect. And so given that that is the case, and given Ms. Bergeron's experience, and many like her who are just stuck in the system, and the government and the officer do not believe that their loved ones would actually return, what do you think the government should do? Should they suspend the use of 179B so that people can, in fact, bring their loved ones here? And then as well, bring in a program, a special measure so that people can, in fact, bring their loved ones here to Canada.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan, for that question. And yeah, to maybe quickly respond to the member's previous question, I did get a chance to read the PDI on this, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you've said today. It is just a clarification of something that's existed for a very long time. There's nothing novel about dual intent that I saw through the PDI that was issued. In terms of answering that second question, I know fiance visas used to exist a long time ago. I don't know if that's the solution today, but understanding that we're in an unprecedented time, I don't see anything wrong with opening the door for things like spousal visas, TRVs, in the same way as super
Sorry
visas.
for interrupting, Mr. Shori. Time is up.
No problem.
Sorry, Ms. Kwan.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Yes, Ms. Tencho.
Just a note, can the committee allow Ms. Chan to submit her testimony to the to our study? I don't believe she was an official witness, so I would just like confirmation that she can do that.
Can I ask the clerk to please clarify this, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Ms. Dancho, whose testimony did you want?
Ms. Chan, she didn't quite get the chance to finish her story, and I think it's pretty important for the study.
Yes,
just for committee members to know.
The committee can take receipt of it as a brief, or if the committee wishes, we can have it appended to the evidence, to the blues directly.
Great. So, Ms. Chan, you have that option if you'd like to do that. We would encourage you to do that, please.
Madam Chair, may I
yes,
just a point of order as well? Thank you. I think that for this particular meeting, we had a lot of difficulties, technical difficulties, where people's sound was not coming through very clearly. I'm not sure what the problem is. And so therefore there's bits of sentences where, you can't really hear what they're saying. Otherwise, you can sort of string the ideas together. But for the purpose of Hansard, I think this would be very difficult to string that together. They were going to have to blank it out. So I'm just wondering, when we have the Hansard Blues available, if we can send the Hansard Blues to the witnesses so that they can review what they were trying to put on record and then correct the information or fill in the bits that did not record so that we actually have an accurate representation of what we're trying to achieve here today.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan, for raising that. I will discuss it with the clerk and the analyst and see what we can do on that end. And I do want to apologize to all the members as well as the witnesses. I think there were some connectivity issues and there were some echoes, and at times it was very difficult to understand. So I have raised that with the clerk of the committee, and we will that will be looked into from the committee logistic team also. And we will try our best to make sure that we don't have these issues in our meetings going forward. But I just want to emphasize for all the witnesses that if there are any things which you would want to raise it for the committee members and you have not been able to raise it today because of time constraint or because of the connectivity issue, you can submit your briefs to the committee, and as we continue our study on the impact of COVID-19 on the immigration system. With that, I would thank all the witnesses for appearing before the committee, and thanks for understanding and the flexibility. Because of the votes, we were not able to start the meeting at 3:30. So I want to apologize for that to all the witnesses, and thanks for being flexible and being with us as we have gone beyond 5:30. So with that, we will end the meeting. Thanks to all the members also, and we will see you on Wednesday as we continue our study. So with that, the meeting is adjourned.